Hello, my name is Lisa. Last year marked a significant change in my life as I embraced my new status as a married woman and added a wedding band to my collection of accomplishments, which notably includes a series of victories in the courtroom where I thrive making persuasive arguments before judges. However, I didn't anticipate needing a tactical plan for family dinners. Let me paint you a picture of my family dynamics. My husband, Jerry, is incredibly close to his mother, and it's easy to see why. Mrs. Mary, his mother, is a formidable woman who single-handedly raised 3 children, a feat I deeply respect. Then there's Olivia, Jerry's sister, who seems to believe the world revolves around her. I recall the first time I stepped into their home, with Jerry proudly wrapping his arm around me, and I felt like a trophy on display. The living room was adorned with countless photos of Jerry and Olivia, creating a cozy yet intense atmosphere, reminiscent of a well-set movie scene where they've been acting out familial roles for years, and I was the new, unexpected character. Upon meeting me, Mrs. Mary offered a tight-lipped smile, the kind that's more obligatory than welcoming, as if she'd rather be anywhere else but there, possibly cleaning with my toothbrush. She was dressed in a floral outfit that screamed matriarchal authority. "Lisa, dear, Jerry has told us so much about you," she remarked, evaluating me as if I were a potential car purchase. "I've been looking forward to meeting you too, Mrs. Mary." "Jerry has nothing but praise for you," I replied, trying to warm up the chilly atmosphere. Olivia quickly joined the conversation, eyeing me cautiously from the moment I entered. "So, Lisa, how's the lawyer life?" "I imagine it's just like on TV, making good money. So, how much do you make?" Her directness caught me off guard, and I choked a bit but managed to laugh it off, deflecting with, "Oh, it's a trade secret." Mrs. Mary then chimed in, pressing for a ballpark figure on my earnings, with Jerry giving me a pleading look to keep my composure. I countered playfully, if I had $1 for every time someone asked me that, I'd have enough to change the subject, and offered a disarming smile. Mrs. Mary snorted in response, saying, "Well, everyone knows what a teacher earns, right, Jerry? But now that you're practically family, sharing is caring." This was just the beginning of what felt like a subtle domestic Cold War. Within weeks, I found myself trying to replicate Mrs. Mary's famed chili recipe in our kitchen when she and Olivia would drop by unannounced, critiquing my cooking as if they were still the mistresses of the house. "Your child needs more heat," Mrs. Mary would say, "barely tasting it, and less salt. Watch your husband's blood pressure." I responded with a nod, while internally rolling my eyes so hard it felt like a brain exercise. Olivia leaned back casually, playing the aloof critic. "See this spot, Lisa? Cleanliness is next to godliness, isn't it, Mom?" Mrs. Mary would agree, treating her words like gospel. Olivia was likely congratulating herself internally as she pointed out a spot I had missed while cleaning. "Funny, I cleaned this place just this morning," I mentioned as I wiped the counter, showing her the missed spot. Meanwhile, Jerry was in the living room, probably engrossed in a video game or catching up on sports statistics, oblivious to the subtle battleground the kitchen had become. I decided it was time he knew what was going on, so I poked my head into the living room where he was lounging on the couch. "Hey, you got a sec?" I asked. Jerry glanced up briefly, looking as if he was worried about missing an important moment in his game. "What's up, babe?" he responded. "Your mom and Olivia, they just barge in, take over, and criticize everything I do. It's like they're on a mission to find faults," I blurted out. Lisa, they mean well, They're just," Jerry trailed off, scratching his head. "I'll talk to them, they'll chill out," he assured me, albeit somewhat absent-mindedly. Returning to the kitchen felt like entering the final round of a hostile cook-off where I was the sole competitor and the judges were ruthlessly critical. "So, Lisa, when's dinner?" "Jerry must be starving," Olivia remarked, eyeing me as if I were a servant. "Whenever the chili decides it's ready," I replied with a light tone, maintaining a delicate balance in my response. Dinner finally made its way to the table, and I could feel the weight of their scrutinizing eyes. Mrs. Mary stirred her chili, inspecting each bean as if it contained cosmic secrets. "Bit different from how I make it," she commented eventually, which I interpreted as her polite way of saying, "Nice try, but you can't compete with me." Thankfully, Jerry jumped into the conversation with enthusiasm. "Babe, this is awesome, right, Mom?" he said, trying to lighten the mood. Olivia just sighed heavily, and Mrs. Mary shrugged as if reluctantly agreeing with a harsh food critic. After they left, with Jerry patting his belly and claiming everything was fine, I watched the door close behind them, feeling diminished, like I was losing at a game I hadn't agreed to play. The next time they visited, it was the same old story, unchanged despite my hope that Jerry's intervention might make a difference. I realized that integrating into Jerry's family was the true challenge, and they had a fixed idea of family that didn't include me yet. If this was what married life was like, I was ready to skip the honeymoon phase. On one particularly slow day, as time seemed to drag like syrup dripping from a bottle, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Mary. "Lisa." Her voice was stern, exacerbating my headache. "You think you can just snatch Jerry away from us, huh?" Her words stung like vinegar on a paper cut. I glanced at Jerry, hoping for some reaction to his mother's harsh tone, but there was none. He remained focused on the TV, as unresponsive as a statue. "Mrs. Mary, it's not like that. We're just trying to set up some boundaries," I explained, my voice tight with restraint. "Boundaries," she scoffed. "That's just a fancy word for shutting us out. You can't do that to us, to me. He's my son." As I fought back my frustration, Jerry finally spoke up, indicating he was ready to address the situation. Jerry didn't quite back me up as I hoped during the call with his mother. "Is everything okay?" "Lisa's not. She's not being unreasonable, I guess," he said, his voice lacking conviction, reminding me of soggy cardboard. "I just can't believe this," Mrs. Mary responded, sounding genuinely hurt. "First, Olivia tells me Lisa is making a fuss over our visits, and now this?" Jerry looked at me with raised eyebrows, as if I were the problem's source. "Olivia said that," he questioned, clearly taken aback. "Yes, she did. And I think she's right. Family is family, Jerry. You can't just turn your back on us," Mrs. Mary pressed, her words pulling at Jerry's heartstrings. I watched, feeling helpless, as the man I loved seemed to deflate, his spirit fading like a balloon days after a party. The call ended with a promise of another family meeting, which felt more like a diplomatic summit where the terms of my capitulation would be discussed. Afterward, Jerry resumed his spot on the couch, lost in a marathon of channel surfing, as if our conversation never happened. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mary continued her drive-by criticisms, each a lesson in passive aggression, and Olivia, she was like a puppeteer, pulling Jerry's strings whenever she pleased. When I learned that Olivia was spreading rumors about me around town, my frustration peaked, but I knew better than to react impulsively. I decided to confront her directly, waiting for the perfect opportunity, which presented itself sooner than expected. I spotted Olivia at the market on a Saturday morning. She was busy shopping and didn't notice me approaching. "Olivia," I called out firmly. She looked up and rolled her eyes. "What do you want, Lisa?" "We need to talk." "It's about the stories you've been spreading," I said calmly, though my heart was pounding. She snorted, a smirk crossing her face. "Stories? I don't know what you're talking about." "The rumors, Olivia. About me being bossy and all that." "Cut it out," I insisted. She laughed, juggling an apple in her hand mockingly. "And what are you going to do if I don't? Do you think you can boss me around?" "I'm serious, Olivia. Spreading lies isn't just mean, it's slander. And I won't stand for it," I replied, maintaining my composure. Her laughter grew louder. "You're going to sue me? Get real, Lisa. You ain't got the stomach for that. People's reputations are at stake." "I'm serious. Keep it up, and yes, I will take legal action if I need to," I warned. Her arrogance was palpable as she leaned in close, her face inches from mine. "Bring it on, Lisa. Do your worst," she challenged, then spun on her heel, almost toppling a display of canned beans, and strutted away. Her laughter echoed down the aisle long after she had left. I walked home slowly, turning over the events in my mind. Later that day, when Jerry returned, I told him what had happened. He was midway through taking off his boots and froze, one boot off, the other still on. "You did what now? Did you tell Olivia off? You threatened her with legal action if she didn't stop spreading rumors." His face flushed with anger, then paled. You couldn't just let it go? Why'd you have to stir the pot, Lisa? I straightened up, my resolve firm. Because it's not right, and I won't be walked over. Not by her, not by anyone. We stood in silence for a long while, the tension thick between us. After our intense exchange, Jerry and I sat in silence, each lost in thought. The weight of our disagreement had drawn a definitive line between us, signaling this was more than just a simple family disagreement. I needed to stand my ground. Jerry, meanwhile, seemed frozen, that familiar look of bewilderment now seemingly etched permanently on his face. I flopped onto the couch, my mind racing. The gossip might die down for a bit, but Olivia was relentless, like a weed that refuses to be pulled. There was no telling when she might stir up trouble again. And Jerry, well, whether he would ever muster the courage to stand up to his family was still up in the air. For now, I just needed to breathe and strategize my next steps in this increasingly complicated family drama. Dealing with Olivia had me mentally drafting a pros and cons list of my relationship with Jerry's family. I had signed up for a life with Jerry, not an ongoing soap opera with his kin. As the idea of divorced began to echo in my mind, unsettlingly akin to a loose change in a dryer, Mrs. Mary, town gossip and Olivia's champion, chose that moment to call. Lisa, dear, she chirped, her tone falsely sweet, like a bird that's spotted a worm. We're hosting a little celebration for Olivia's engagement at Pietro's next week. We'd love to see you there. Her voice oozed in sincerity, the kind that seemed to challenge, I dare you to show up. After hanging up, I stared at the silent phone, a sense of foreboding settling in. This invitation smelled like a trap. Guess who's got plans for us next week? I blurted out to Jerry, who was sitting at the kitchen table, his forehead wrinkled in thought. Who's scheming now? I added pointedly. Your sister's engagement party, I said flatly. We're invited, courtesy of Mrs. Mary. Jerry's face paled, the creases in his forehead deepening. Oh hell, he muttered, echoing my sentiments perfectly. So, what's the play here, Jerry? Do we just roll over and play nice, or what? I pressed, frustrated by his silence. Jerry finally looked up, his eyes serious. Lisa, it's family. I think we should go. I crossed my arms, feeling the anger rise. And let Olivia have a field day? I'm not their punching bag, I countered. Jerry threw up his hands, a bit too dramatically. What do you want me to say? That's my sister, Lisa. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. And I'm your wife. Or does that not count for much these days? The words divorce lingered on the tip of my tongue, but I held it back. Jerry ran his hand through his hair, making it stand on end as if he'd touched a live wire. Of course it counts. Look, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place here. Well, guess what, sweetheart?
So am I.
I married you, not your constant need to please your family at my expense, I shot back. Jerry stood, walked over, and took my hands in his rough, work-worn hands. Lisa, I love you. I do. And I hate that it's come to this. Let's not go to the party. You and me, we're a team, right? It was the first time in a long while he'd chosen me over them without hesitation. It felt like discovering an oasis in the desert. That night, the idea of divorce quietly receded, not completely gone, but out of sight for now. Sleeping lightly, almost like a watchful dog, was enough for me to catch my breath and hold on to the hope that Jerry and I could find solid ground again. When we arrived at Pietro's for Olivia's engagement party, the place was bustling, walls vibrating with loud laughter and the clink of glasses. I immediately spotted Mrs. Mary, reigning like a queen at the center table, exuding an air of dominion. Olivia was beaming as if she had won the lottery, and her fiancé, Walter, looked like a deer caught in headlights, clearly overwhelmed. His parents seemed equally out of place, stiff and awkward as if they had stumbled into the wrong movie. No sooner had we stepped inside than Mrs. Mary locked onto me with a hawkish gaze. Lisa, she cooed as if I were a child stepping out of line. You'll be taking care of the bill tonight, right? To show you're one of us. I nearly choked on my drink.
What?
Why me? The entire table turned to listen, the air thick with anticipation of drama. Traditions, sweetheart, Mrs. Mary smiled, stretching the word. The newest family member shows their commitment. My jaw snapped shut so quickly that I thought I might chip a tooth. Commitment? Sounds more like a shakedown, I retorted, unable to hide my indignation. The crowd perked up, sensing a spectacle. Mrs. Mary puffed up, offended. Excuse me? That's uncalled for, she declared. Jerry leaned in, his voice a desperate whisper. Just do it, Lisa. It's not a big deal. A big deal? I hissed back, my whisper turning into a growl. No thanks, I'm nobody's piggy bank. Jerry's hiss was barely audible, yet crystal clear. Pay the damn bill, Lisa, or we're through. I mean it. My laughter was bitter, sharp as a snapped cable. You're not serious. His expression was all stone and resolute. You think I'm playing? I stared him down. Divorce over this? His family-first mantra was shaking me to my core. And where do I fit in, huh? It was showdown time. Even Walter and his parents watched, bewildered by the unfolding drama. I pushed back my chair and stood up, my voice ringing out clear and firm. No, I'm not doing this dance. The room fell into a stunned silence. Some whispered, and others gaped. Jerry's face flickered red and white, like a malfunctioning stoplight. Mrs. Mary seemed on the verge of an explosion. I walked out into the cool, dark night, the air tasting of freedom. The door slammed behind me, sealing the chaos within as I made my quick escape. My heart raced, but it was Jerry who had thrown out the word divorce, not me. I'd barely settled into a dive bar with a strong drink when my phone rang. It was Jerry. I hesitated, considering not answering, but I did. Lisa, listen, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say divorce. Jerry's voice was rushed, filled with regret. Before I could respond, Olivia's voice burst through, loud and angry. You've ruined my engagement dinner. You selfish. The phone must have switched hands abruptly. I could almost feel the venom in Olivia's voice. In the background, Mrs. Mary's voice was clear. Why should I pay? He's your son. You pay the bill. I won't have my daughter married into a family that doesn't know how to treat. The chaos from Pietro spilled through the phone like a reality show gone wrong, without a single laugh to lighten the mood. People were arguing, their voices a tangled mess of accusations and defenses. Pushing away from the bar, my newfound calm lent clarity to my voice. Olivia, chill out. It's your mom creating the drama, not me, I said evenly. From the other end, Jerry's faint whisper cut in, urging me to hang up. Hang up, Lisa, he said, nearly drowned out by Olivia's continued ranting. I wasn't about to engage in their family circus any longer. I ended the call, ignoring the cascade of missed calls and unread texts that likely spun the same narrative of guilt and blame. Turning to the bartender, I asked for another drink. He nodded, pouring another shot silently. Around me, the bar hummed quietly, regulars lost in their worlds. I was trying to gather my thoughts when my phone lit up again with Jerry's name. Resolute, I flipped the phone face down, letting it ring through to voicemail. Conversing now seemed futile, especially with the chaotic backdrop I had just escaped. Several drinks later, the door creaked open, admitting a chill gust of evening air. I didn't bother looking up, too absorbed in my reflections. I was here in this bar, not because I enjoyed the ambience, but because my in-laws had cast me as their bank and my supposed partner had turned it into an ultimatum. Picking up my phone, I typed out a message to Jerry. We're done. Olivia can think what she wants, and your mom can deal with her damn bill. I won't be part of this circus anymore. As I hit send, the phone rang once more. This time, I powered it off. I was done with the arguing, the unrealistic demands, and most of all, tired of feeling alone in what was supposed to be a supportive partnership. With the room finally ceasing its metaphorical spin, my mind cleared, and I knew what needed to happen next. It was time to look forward, even if that meant going it alone. No more games, no more being the scapegoat for a family that couldn't look beyond their drama. I walked out of the bar, leaving the noise and the night behind. The air was getting colder, and the city lights began to blur into the impending darkness. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it was mine to choose. The chaos at the restaurant had escalated beyond anyone's expectations. The evening had exploded, culminating in the groom calling off the engagement right then and there. Olivia's expression when he declared he'd had enough was unforgettable, shock and disbelief written all over her face. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mary had lost it, her screams echoing through the venue, causing such a scene that the groom's family almost called 911. It was the kind of chaos typical of trashy daytime TV shows, complete with the potential for flying chairs. In the wake of that disaster, I filed for divorce and severed all phone ties with Jerry. His calls went unanswered, and his messages were deleted. The last I heard, he, his sister, and the infamous mother-in-law from hell were all holed up in the same house, likely driving each other mad. As for me, life had become simpler, like surfacing for air after years of being submerged. I was finally breathing freely, embracing the tranquility of my new life. That infamous evening still crops up whenever I encounter people from my old social circle. Honestly, it gets tiring. So, for those who are still interested, here's a little update. I'm living my best and most peaceful life now. These days, you can find me at my favorite cafe just down the street from my apartment. It's the kind of place where the coffee is robust and the patrons aren't prying. The barista knows me well. When I walk in, he just nods and asks, the usual, as if he's confirming something as obvious as whether the sky is blue. Yep, I reply, settling into the familiar rhythm of my new, uncomplicated life. Work is a breeze now that it's just work. No family dramas or meddling in-laws to navigate. My free time is truly mine, devoid of guilt trips and unwanted obligations. I spend evenings curled up on my old couch, the one piece of furniture that has survived all my moves. Sure, its springs have seen better days, but it contours perfectly to my back. I usually watch a crime show, where the bad guys get caught by minute 30, and it's the predictability that I find soothing. There's a peacefulness to my life now. It's not eerie or lonely, just profoundly peaceful. I breathe in and breathe out, enjoying the absence of eggshells beneath my feet or the need to mend family rifts. This is what living should feel like. When I go to bed each night, it's with a sense of accomplishment. No external validation needed. I know my worth, and I'm finally living in a way that honors it. While eating lunch one day, my phone dings with a message from an unknown number. It's probably Jerry trying to reach me using someone else's phone. I delete the message unread. Not today, Satan. Not ever, I mutter to myself. People used to warn me I'd regret my choices, but here I am, without a single regret in sight. The days unfold pleasantly, each ending with a glass of something smooth and a book I've been meaning to read. The heroine is tough but fair, and she reminds me a bit of someone I know, myself.